All right, let's talk about the wide receivers that we have at the top of our rankings at Action Network. The top three: Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs. You can maybe make some arguments for some other guys who could be in the top three: Keenan Allen, DK Metcalf, Justin Jefferson. All of those guys are in the top six for us, so they're knocking on the door. Raybon, who are you high on this week?
So at wide receiver, I think I'm going with Brandon Cooks. You look at the Houston Texans, and I mean they're essentially down two wide receivers, and I know it's a tough defense in Indianapolis, but somebody's got to catch the ball, and for Houston. So I'm going with Brandon Cooks here, just because I think Deshaun Watson he can make plays, kind of improvisational wise, and you look at Indianapolis and these last couple weeks, and they've gone against some explosive number one receivers, Devontae Adams and AJ Brown, and those guys have put up numbers. And I think it's part to do with just kind of the scheme and the quarterbacks, and part to do with those wide receiver skills. But Brandon Cooks just has the potential for such a huge target share that I'm willing to fade the matchup here, especially he's 5,600, which is usually kind of that wide receiver 2-3 pricing anyway. So you're potentially getting, that number one wide receiver production at a discounted cost anyway.
Sean, who are you high on this week?
I'm pretty high on Denzel Mims. He's still way too cheap at 4,100. Last week, I'm still hitting myself. I shied away, even though I think he was like 3,500 or something ridiculous. I shied away just due to the tough matchup, but he was still able to post a pretty solid 4-catch, 67-yard game against the Dolphins. Has a great matchup this week against Vegas. Obviously, Crowder and Perryman cap his floor ceiling a bit, but he has legit wide receiver 2-3 potential if one of them were to ever go down. But in the meantime, I still think he's way too cheap, even with the crowded receiving room at 4,100 with this matchup. He's way too talented to keep under wraps for much longer. And then the other is a pretty obvious play, in my opinion, is Robert Woods at 5,900 against the Cardinals. I mean, this isn't rocket science here. He's coming off a 14 and 11 target game stretch. His floor ceiling combos is way too high for this price. He had a massive 13-catch, 172-yard game against Arizona last year. It just seems way too cheap at this price.
Yeah, Sean, as you mentioned, in the two games last year against Arizona, he did really well, and one of those really was specifically shadowed by Patrick Peterson, and that wasn't much of a hindrance. So I expect that he will be shadowed again. Peterson has been shadowing for much of the past 5 games, so he probably will run a lot of routes against Peterson, but I honestly don't know how much that's going to matter. And also to your point about Denzel Mims, I think his matchup might be even a little bit better than we would normally get going against the Vegas Raiders, because Damon Arnett, one of their starting cornerbacks, has a concussion. And so if he's out, that means he's going to be running routes against backup Isaiah Johnson, who's a 4th round, 2nd-year backup, has 119 NFL coverage snaps in his career and a 38.7 PFF coverage grade this year. Like, that's a very winnable matchup. Even though Mims is a rookie, I think Mims would have a pretty clear edge there. So I definitely like both of those calls. A guy I am really high on is Justin Jefferson. And this dovetails with the Kirk Cousins call. The Jags are without 4 of their top 5 cornerbacks. Maybe some of those guys will return, so definitely keep an eye on that. But even when those guys are out there, the Jags are still not good against the pass. And if Adam Thielen is out once again, of course, also have to keep an eye on that. But assuming Thielen is out, I mean, Jefferson should once again be targeted very heavily. He had 13 targets last week without Thielen, 2 touchdowns. Normally it's Thielen getting the touchdowns, but in his absence, Jefferson is just getting everything. And since moving from the slot to the perimeter in week 3, Jefferson trails only Tyreek Hill with 848 yards receiving. I mean, on the perimeter, he really has been one of the best wide receivers in the league. He's not getting all of the touchdowns, but he's getting the yards, and with Thielen out, the touchdowns could really be there. So Jefferson is someone I really like with this matchup. Raybon, who are you low on?
DeAndre Hopkins. You look at the matchup, they're going against the Rams, who have the cornerbacks and there's the defensive scheme to limit him. And then his quarterback has been a little bit iffy, and that's just a bad combination. And then you start looking back through his game logs and the big games, recently Detroit, that's a pretty bad defense, 137 yards. The Jets, 131 yards, another bad defense. Seattle in week 7, 103 yards. That's a bad defense. And then Buffalo, he had 127, but remember, he needed that Hail Mary to get there. He would have had a pretty, kind of pedestrian line in that game as well. And then the other games, you have New England, 55 yards on 5 catches. The week before that, Seattle, the second time, 51 yards on 5 catches. And then against Miami, the game before the Buffalo game, 3 catches, 30 yards. So he's kind of been trending down and or taking advantage of great matchups. This is neither, and his quarterback, again, is just not quite right. So I don't think DeAndre Hopkins is quite worth, that top tier wide receiver price in cash games, and deserves to be in the same tier with Devontae and Metcalf and Keenan Allen. I think he's more in, kind of going down. He should probably be in the 60s, 6,000s this week, but he's 7,800. That's too high.
Raybon, it's almost as if you are looking at the outline, which honestly,
I don't.
I know you don't, but I mean, Hopkins, he's the guy that I have there too. And you touched on everything. I'll add one thing here. The tough matchup against Jalen Ramsey. It's not as if he's going against just the best cornerback in the league. He's going against the best cornerback in the league who has shadowed him like every year for the past 4 years. So like Ramsey knows him. Like they have battled, for years since their days in the AFC South. And most of the time, Ramsey has gotten the better of him. A couple of times, Hopkins has gone off. But most of the time, Ramsey has been able to hold Hopkins in that 50-ish yard range. And I think once again, that is probably where we're going to see Hopkins, like knowing that he does have the ability to pop off for a big game. But it's more likely than not that Ramsey does a pretty good job of bottling him up. So I'm entirely with you there. I view Hopkins as more of a wide receiver 2 with upside than a wide receiver 1. Sean, who are you low on?
Well, this guy kind of depends who starts at quarterback for the Dolphins this week, but I'm lower on Devontae Parker, especially if Tua suits up. I think it's pretty clear by now that when Tua starts, Parker, sees a pretty significant drop off, and when Fitzmagic is in there, I give him a huge boost. But either way, the Dolphins should be able to beat the Bengals this week with a pretty run heavy game plan. They're favored by, I think, 12 points right now. And all their running backs might actually be healthy this week. So I think it's a great week for them to just have a more run heavy approach. And again, if Tua starts, I think I'm clearly fading him here. And then the other guy is Keenan Allen, who, I've been treating as just an auto play in DFS. I've been projecting him close to 8 receptions these past few games. But I think with Austin Eckler back, it does cut into his target share enough to lower him down to maybe wide receiver, 8 this week, which is enough for me to at least have some pause at 8,100. And Herbert attempted 51 passes last week. They usually have massive volume. I think on the other side of the ball, you have the Patriots playing this run heavy offense that might kill the clock a bit and lower their overall volume. So, Keenan Allen's the type of player where just a slight decrease in his volume is going to send him down my rankings quite a bit. So I'm a bit lower on Allen this week.
Yeah, Sean, I'm with you there. Now, the prop for the wide receivers. Who do we have?
How the hell can we even project Tyreek Hill at this point? It's almost impossible to set a line for him. So I'm just going to throw it out there. 91.5 receiving yards.
I will amazingly take the under. I have it closer to, 84.5. which feels low. Instinctively, I want to take the over here, but yeah, I go under.
Wait, you said you had 91.5, Sean?
Yeah, 91.5.
Wow, I don't know if you're looking at all of our rankings and like making a very intelligent line.
Actually,
but I have it at 92. So
oh,
I'm going.
So you're way over. Actually, I haven't thought of that. I could actually look at your guys' projections. No, I'm too honest to do that. I didn't peek.
No, I mean, this is Tyreek Hill. Like, this is, at the beginning of the season, like, this is the ones, obviously got a lot wrong, got a lot right. But this is one I was kind of screaming about. Is like, everyone was kind of down on Tyreek. Should we draft him in the same tier as these other top wide receivers? I mean, the quarterback for him and Patrick Mahomes, and you look at the matchup in which he essentially put up the most fantasy points, was it since Jamal Charles? I think it was. For any player, and it's against one of the top defenses in the NFL. Like, this is the type of talent that Tyreek Hill has. It's like when they see a good defense that can stop the run or that can plays well against the pass, they just target Tyreek Hill more and they go more pass heavy. So this Denver defense, another really good one, but there's no cornerback in this league at this point that really can guard Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, and if you think about it, his floor is super high right now, which is really scary to think. I would say week 6 was the only bad game, really. Other than that, he's either had over 75 yards or a touchdown every single game. So that's just scary to think that a guy with, overall, obviously, wide receiver 1 overall upside every week, and still, he has this high floor. Yeah, it's insane.
Looking at this more, I'm going to need to adjust this up because I'm thinking about Raymond. You mentioned, the Broncos really don't have a cornerback who can stick with him. And I think that's especially the case now because Bryce Callahan, I think, is dealing with a foot injury, and he would match up much better with Tyreek than AJ Boye, who just doesn't have the speed, and we saw that with Carlton Davis last week. The guys who match up better with the bigger bodied wide receivers, those physical press cornerbacks, they cannot handle Tyreek Hill because he can just get by them. And so we might have another situation like that once again this week. So yeah, I will probably be adjusting this up, but Tyreek Hill. I mean, what to say here?
I thought the prop was going to be first quarter yards for Tyreek Hill.
Yeah. I thought you guys were going to jump on the over and say, yeah, he'll have that by the first quarter.